Are you going through a spiritual awakening? A spiritual awakening is a profound shift in consciousness marked by heightened awareness. You're essentially deepening your sense of purpose. You're changing internally and doing a lot of emotional growth. Your values are changing. And with a spiritual awakening, your consciousness is expanding, and so also your reality is expanding. So a lot of different things come with a spiritual awakening. You may experience a heightened awareness to your sensitivities, as in like, since you're doing a lot of like emotional work, you start to feel your emotions a lot more. And when you start to feel your emotions a lot more, you can also start to understand your own emotions. And when you understand your own emotions, you start to understand other people's emotions. And when you start to understand other people's emotions, you cultivate a sense of empathy and compassion towards other people. Or you might even like start tuning into the sensitivities of like your hearing, your eyesight, or just like the surroundings around you. You have a heightened sense of awareness and sensitivity that's going on. And with also a spiritual awakening, you have uh, you seek meaning and purpose within everything that's going around you. It turns out like you were probably going through something in the past that recently like knocked you out of alignment. Like it just rocked the world. And now you're over here in limbo and uncertainty, trying to make sense of everything that's going on. You're trying to find purpose, you're trying to find meaning. And so you're probably looking at videos like this, like a spiritual awakening, or you're looking into like more metaphysical or esoteric videos, or even like videos on religion or self development, self improvement, trying to improve yourself and find meaning to life, trying to understand and just have a little bit more purpose within your life. And then another thing that also goes in with a spiritual awakening is finding inner peace. And when you're going through your spiritual awakening, you're starting to understand and realize that peace comes in from within you. You can't really get peace externally from other people, because if you rely on other people for peace, if they were to go haywire, that peace is gone. You have to cultivate the peace from within yourself. And so you start to understand that peace comes in from yourself. You might start to go out into nature a lot more and start connecting out with nature to get your peace, or you might start to shift your values. And that's another thing that happens in with a spiritual awakening. It's big, is your values start to shift, and you start to understand that a lot of the things that you were doing in the past wasn't really contributing to where you want to be in life, where you want to go, your future self. It doesn't help you get that sense of peace. Like you might be drinking a lot of alcohol or doing a lot of drugs in the past, and now you're starting to make better decisions for yourself, like reading a book or exercising or doing meditation, journaling, breathing exercises, eating better for yourself. You're starting to shift your values and shift your perspective onto things that put you on a higher timeline, put you on your future self's path, like what you really want to be, stuff that's in alignment for you. And this is the stuff that happens in a spiritual awakening. You start to break down the old stuff that's not necessarily working for you and start to reconstruct things that really do help um, with your life. And so you start to go through a lot of profound inner changes within yourself as you start to realize that a lot of the stuff that you were probably growing up knowing is not necessarily the right way for you. But we're all different. We all have different ways that we navigate through life. We have all been brought up differently. And what works for me might not work for you, and what works for you might not work for me. But the beauty in it is how you can find the stuff that works for you. And so you start to go through all these different profound changes throughout life, different values and perspectives that you're killing to make the best out of your life, because we only got one life over here. And another cool thing with life, or the just the universe, the world in general, is like they like to communicate to us through signs and synchronicities. So you might start to see like feathers on the ground, and it could be like different colors, and we can talk about the feathers and the meanings of the feathers in a different video. But you might see feathers on the ground, and that's just like a sign from the universe that your angels are around you, or you might need to tune into something, or you might even see a bunch of repeating numbers. And right now I just hit 444 on my time. You might see a bunch of repeating numbers like 444, 111, 1212, 1111, 222, 333, stuff like that. And that's just the way that the universe communicates to you, because the universe likes to communicate mathematically in terms of numerology, and we can talk about more numerology later on in another video. But numerology is a way that the universe communicates through us, and it has the repeating number has a lot of meaning behind it. And when you start to see, when you're hitting your spiritual awakening, you're going to start to see a lot of repetitive numbers, which is really cool. And within a spiritual awakening, you also start to increase your intuition. When you start to increase your intuition, this is like when you're doing the emotional healing work, when you're starting to understand yourself more. When you're able to understand yourself more, you're able to connect with your intuition more, because you're starting to realize the gifts and the power that you hold. You're getting these intuitive hits. You're getting this knowledge. It's your intuition, and like, this is our gift. This is something that we've always had, and we do go through out life kind of like we could ignore our intuition. And when we do ignore our intuition, you might find that you might not be in a very good spot. Our intuition's there for a reason. It's essentially our higher self giving us little, sorry for all the coughing. It's our higher self giving us little like tracks to follow like these footprints that we like, this trail that our higher self like led down for us. It's also stuff that we've went through in the past, and we learn from the past mistakes that we've been through, and it's guiding us into a higher path, to our higher self, a higher timeline. And that's where like our increased intuition comes from, when you start to learn yourself more, which is really great. And that also ties into another thing that happens within spiritual awakenings, is a lot of emotional release. And so when you're starting to release a lot of the pent up emotions that you had, a lot of the bottled up emotions that we probably had from like past experiences, you start to connect more with your gifts. Because emotions, when you start to release your emotions, you're starting to heal your emotions. It's okay to cry and feel your emotions. It's totally okay to do that. And when you start to go through a lot of that, you start to essentially undo the past limiting the beliefs and situations that are holding you back. Like, let's say somebody called you ugly in the past, and you've been holding on to that belief that you're ugly. You just gotta love yourself. Ugly, you gotta love yourself. And so that might not necessarily be true for another person. Some other person out there might think you're the most beautiful person out there. It all just comes down to perspective. But you're holding on to this emotional belief that you're ugly, and like that's weighing you down, that's holding you down, and that's stopping you from manifesting a beautiful life for yourself, because you're having these things have more power over your beliefs, your control. And so that also comes with like a lot of emotional release, or like, let's just say like past patterns saying that you're not good enough or you're not worthy enough. That's stuff that you start to discover within your spiritual awakening, and then you start to release so you can step into your highest self. And that goes into another thing with spiritual awakening, is connecting to your higher self. You start to understand where you want to be in your future, your highest self, your future self. You're here, your present self, your future self's here. And you start to make that connection to your higher self, because to bridge that gap between yourself now and your highest self, you need to start operating in the way that your higher self is operating. You need to start doing the actions that your higher self is doing. And so when you start taking aligned action to being your highest self, you start to step onto your highest timeline. You start to follow those intuitive hits to be where you want to be, where you desire to be, and where you should be later on in life. And that's when you get that connection to your higher self. And then you start to, in a spiritual awakening, expand your consciousness. As you're changing your values and your perspective, you're starting to understand that we're all like essentially connected. There's a lot of things happening behind the scenes. There's a lot of things that are happening that we're not entirely aware of, but we do have a lot more control over the way we perceive and see things. And so your consciousness starts to expand, because the more we do know, the more we find out we don't know anything. And so these are all the things that kind of tie into a spiritual awakening. We all have different traits, and we all experience spiritual awakenings in a different way. If you see this video, you either probably went through a spiritual awakening, going through a spiritual awakening, or you're about to go through a spiritual awakening, because this video is in your way for a reason. My name is Tristan. I hope this video helps. If it resonates or something, leave it in the comment section below. But I'll see you guys in a future video. Hasta la pasta.